My part of the presentation is on the filming techniques of the film Castaways. More specifically, I'm going to be talking about the film techniques as it relates to Schultz's main ideas. I'm going to do this by talking about the film techniques on each slide and an example of that filming technique in the movie, and then I'm going to talk about a main idea from Schultz's book that relates to the filming technique in the example. The three filming techniques I'm going to be talking about are the use of visuals, the use of sound, and the use of music. So the first one I'm talking about is the use of visuals. So a visual in a film is anything you can see on screen. The example of the filming technique use of visual that I'm going to be using from the film Castaways is the plane crash scene. Now in the plane crash scene, there are many different quick shots and different moving back and forth from different images, which causes chaos in your brain. Many different colors flashing forward, images and shapes just flashing back and forth in your brain makes your brain feel the chaos. Then this leads to anxiety and stress in a lot of people. This relates to Schultz's main idea if we're looking at the movie as being the speaker, as using pathos. So the film is trying to make you feel a certain emotion in order to have you connect better to the film itself. In this case, it causes you to feel the chaos and the stress that the people in the plane crash have felt. These tools like this help the viewers stay engaged in the film. Now, this is not the only example of the use of visuals in the film, but it is a very big example that I like to use. Overall, the use of visuals in this scene helps to encapsulate the audience. The next one I'm going to use is the use of sound. I will be talking about the use of sound, and I will also be talking about the filming technique of the lack of sound. I also want to make note that I am not just talking about sound, and I'm not actually talking about music quite yet. I will get to that on the next slide. So the scene that I will be talking about is the scene when Chuck finally makes a fire on the beach. I will be also talking about the scenes leading up to this. So in the scenes leading up to this big scene, there is a lot of failure for the main character, and there's also no dialogue. So when he finally succeeds and has that dialogue, you're not expecting the dialogue, and it feels kind of wrong, which draws you in even more. So this is another main idea from Schultz's writing, and the idea is that a wise speaker will know when to use writing and use it sparingly and not talk all the time. This is true in this film because, as I mentioned before, you become so happy because of all the leading up failures and all the leading up lack of dialogue, which causes this big moment. Again, this is not the only example of the use of sound in the film that leads to being able to draw in this audience, but it is a pretty big example, especially when it feels a time in the movie when hope was needed. On this last slide, I'm going to be talking about the use of music. So it's good to note that in this film, they don't use music very often, but they did use music at the end. In the end of the movie, Chuck kind of loses his old life, and he's forced to make a decision on where he goes next. And so we get this end scene where he's standing on the road, looking, and there's 3 different ways he can go. And there's a music playing in the background, and the music is kind of down, sad that he lost his old life, but hopeful because he is starting a new one. This relates back to the use of music tells us without actually using dialogue or visual, which is a different form and draws you in. Again, it's showing, not telling. This relates to Schultz as well because one of his main points was a good communicator knows when to listen. So this is the film is listening to the audience and letting them decide what happens to Chuck at the end. When this draws people in and leaves them wondering with many questions on what happened to Chuck. And this is overall just leaves many people very intrigued by the movie. So overall, the use of filming techniques along with examples from the movie and looking at Schultz's main ideas, one can see how this film was very well made. Thank you.